Kansas City Chiefs usually sit back and let a real good player just fall to them. Can't do that anymore because they have holes now too. Are they human? Is it a sign that they're coming back to the pack? We'll talk about it here on Locked On NFL.
The barbershop is open and Tony Wiggins has a chair for you. He's ready with some real NFL talk. The local experts of Locked On bring their expertise, and Wiggy is ready with his clippers and shears. Sit down and enjoy. The new Locked On NFL starts now. Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
There is no doubt that it is your team every day here on Locked On NFL. We thank you for making us your first listen. I'm the host of the Locked On NFL PM show, Tony Wiggins, along with my daily guest today. It is Kevin Ostracker from Locked On Ravens, and we're here to give it to you like you can't get it nowhere else, man. Twice a day here on Locked On NFL, and it's our turn now here in the barbershop. Here's what we're going to discuss today. First of all, let me tell you this. Wherever you get your podcast, make sure you look or listen. If you watch or listen, make sure you tap in every single day so you don't miss a show. Here's what me and KO are going to do. At the end of the show, we're going to talk about Pittsburgh Steelers. Are they slow playing Justin Fields, and is it going to cost them? Meaning if he gets to free agency, will the Giants and the Jets both make a run at him and cause the Steelers to have to actually pay him more money? In the middle of the show, we're going to talk about the two teams picking number one and number two at the top. How much does whether or not a quarterback goes in one of those two picks, how much does it impact the other team? I think one quarterback does definitely go in the top two. We'll discuss that. And are the Chiefs finally human? That's where we're going to get to. What do I mean by that, Kevin Ostracker? I explained that to you a little while ago. I said, normally Kansas City's just sitting there like, whatever y'all don't want, we're at the back of this draft. Whoever y'all don't take, we're going to take him, whether we need him or not, because our roster's full, and they usually end up in a good player, whether it's Carl Loftus, whether, all of these dudes, Rashid Rice, they got in the second round, he was a fallback player. Look, they ain't in that position now because of free agency, because they've been so good, and because they actually missed a little bit on the offensive line. The Chiefs are finally in a position where they're human like everybody else, and they got to pick something for need.
Yeah, they do. And you mentioned the offensive line. I know they franchise tag Trey Smith, but, other than that, you do have a couple of question marks. Creed Humphrey's not a question mark. Joe Thuney, if he's able to play his position, is not a question mark. But you have to figure out the tackle positions with Jawan Taylor and, whatever they want to do on the other side there, because they invested a high-level draft pick into a rookie. It didn't work out for them. They tried to put this patchwork thing over the tackle position, didn't work. So now for the Chiefs, if there is an offensive lineman that either falls, or even if it's a guy that might be like an early second-round guy and they have their first-round pick, they might reach for that guy now because they need to. In their Super Bowl losses, poor offensive line play has been a huge reason, and credit to the defenses as well. Tampa's defense and Philly's defense, what they're able to do too. But, we saw after that first Super Bowl loss, Wig, the Chiefs went out there and replaced all five starters. They were not messing around. All five starters on that line were gone the next season. So you're right. It's like they're able to sit back, kind of figure out, last year trading with the Bills for Xavier Worthy and like, okay, we like a guy, just going to take BPA, which works. But when you have a need staring you right in the face, you have to address it. And it feels like the Chiefs have been like this invincible team that can just do whatever they want, put together whoever they want, and they're going to win. Well, they got by with all these close games last season. And then obviously in the Super Bowl, their weaknesses reared their head. So I think that they need to figure out things based off of need this year, and we'll see how that takes them.
The boys on Locked On Chiefs, they seem a little bit perplexed too as about what they're going to do. Of course, they got the tag on Trey Smith, where they're expected to put the tag on Trey Smith. And now there are some people that believe that they have too many young guys that they're trying to develop. Why add another one to the mix on the offensive line on the edges? Listen to the boys from Locked On Chiefs talk about all of their problems that we don't usually see them have in Kansas City.
Under the radar is something that I think we can get really carried away with this particular season because the needs are so glaringly massive in your face. You have to fix the offensive line no matter what. The whole tag situation with Trey Smith plays into that. You can't let it degrade any further, because if we've learned one thing over the last 8 years, it's that you can only slow Patrick Mahomes down if you ruin his offensive line. That is the answer for the rest of this league. So besides that, what are some of the under the radar needs, the ones that maybe don't show up, but they're going to have to address? On the offensive side for me, it's really about you get past the top three receivers. What are you going to do then? How can you make this unit more? Because along with protection, having more targets downfield that can grow into a trust pattern with Patrick Mahomes is the other end of that spectrum.
So let me tap into that real quick. Is their line really that bad, or are they just used to playing with a line that is really that good? And then when you hear Chris and Ryan get into the receivers, they said when you get past the first three, there are a lot of teams that can't get to wide receiver 2 without having a problem. Now they're worried about their fourth receiver. Is this a situation where we're judging the Chiefs and it's woe is me because they don't have 4 receivers? Is it woe is me because Mahomes doesn't have all of the time that he's used to having? They're still better than most teams in the league. They went to the Super Bowl and they won 17 games in the regular season. We can talk about whether it was luck or not, but I think we're giving a pass a little bit to Patrick Mahomes because he is used to winning with superlative talent. Where if that falls off a little bit, now all hell looks like it's broken loose a little bit with him, especially when they play really, really good teams.
Yeah, I think the offensive line is not this 32nd last in the league worst offensive line. And you can tell that with some of the guys they have, like a Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't mean that some of the big issues that came from them this season don't need to be fixed. In my opinion, I do, though, think that they need to address it because we've seen it be an issue in both of their Super Bowl losses, like I said earlier. So, again, you can have talent on that line. I'm not saying they don't. I'm not saying they don't have talent at wide receiver either. You're getting Rashee Rice back, and Xavier Worthy really stepped up over the course of the really second half of the season. Plus, had that quiet 100-plus yard game in the Super Bowl no one's talking about because the offensive line was so bad. So you still have players on the roster. It's not like the Chiefs have to enter this like rebuild mode or aggressive mode because they have nobody. But the weaknesses that happened are a pretty big reason why they lost the Super Bowl. And those are some weaknesses that at least the previous 2 seasons, they were able to overcome pretty well. But now it's staring them in the face. They have to address it.
Yeah, they got to address it. And I get that. Part of it, though, for me is at some point, we have to have the guts to say, well, Patrick just needs to play better. Well, Kelsey doesn't need to drop those passes. At some point, we need to say, okay, Trent McDuffie is an all-pro and he got beat twice down the sideline by another great player. Andy Reid may not have had the best game plan. At some point, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Belichick and Brady went 9 years without winning a championship, right smack in the middle of a 20-year run at Dynasty. We didn't make any excuses for New England. We just said they weren't good enough and somebody else beat them. It always seems like to me with the Chiefs, everybody wants to come up with this woe is me, the whole world is falling apart when you lose in the Super Bowl, as opposed to just saying it comes down to blocking and tackling. You just got to be better on that particular day because it doesn't, in my opinion, give the opponent that beat them the credit that they deserve for being better on that day. Well, it's 2 teams that have been pretty bad as of late. They got a lot of things to work out, and they're picking number 1 and number 2 in the draft, and it all starts with quarterback. That's the Titans and the Browns. We'll discuss their options and what we believe they should do in just a second here on Locked On NFL. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment in the game exciting, whether I'm backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3. I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantaneously, like T.I. would say. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Moving along with my man Kevin Ostracker from Locked On Ravens here on Locked On NFL. And now we talked about teams that used to win all the time and are used to winning all the time. And now we got to talk about a couple of teams that are not used to winning all the time. One is the Tennessee Titans. The other one is the Cleveland Browns. They're both in a dilemma. They got to find a quarterback. Well, Cleveland has already paid the dude and still paying the dude a whole bunch of money, but still they have to find a quarterback, right? The Titans are up first. I want you to hear Tyler Rowland kind of talk his way through it a little bit when he says that they need a free agent along with a rookie if they pick him. If they don't pick a rookie, they're really going to need that free agent, and why their choices are a little bit limited to a guy I'm sure he doesn't want.
As the quarterback dust settles, it appears the Tennessee Titans might be stuck with Sam Darnold. But with that being said, do want to mention that the Tennessee Titans have visits lined up with the top 4 prospects in the draft. The quarterbacks are both coming this week. Abdul Carter is coming this week, and Travis Hunter is coming just a couple of weeks after that due to a scheduling conflict. But the Titans are trying to get their situation in order so they can figure out what to do, and they need to because they need to know how to operate in free agency. And they're going to need to get a quarterback in free agency no matter what level they are at. And let's look at this from multiple different ways. So number one, if the Tennessee Titans truly know we are not taking a quarterback at the top of the draft, whether that be a trade back, whether that be just taking a non-quarterback with the number 1 pick, if the Tennessee Titans do not take a quarter or do not intend to take a quarterback number 1 in the draft, then they need to attack free agency. And if they're looking for a starter in 2025, their options are very, very slim. So look, Kirk Cousins makes a ton of sense as a 1-year bridge option. It would be like Russell Wilson with the Pittsburgh Steelers last year. So outside of those 4 guys, Carr and Cousins, who aren't available, Rodgers and Wilson, who don't make sense and haven't been connected to the Titans at all, like, other than them, who is there? Who is there? Well, in my mind, the only guy that could really be a starting quarterback for the Titans where Brian Callahan will say, I can win games with this guy. The only guy left is Sam Darnold.
It's always interesting to me this time of year. We all do it. We try to prognosticate our team into wins and try to figure out how they can make this year successful. That's a bad spot to be in a lot of times because the draft really isn't a place for that in most situations. But a young guy who can play quarterback the way Jaden Daniels uplifted Washington last year is like getting a guy a fresh haircut. You could change their life, man. And I think Cam Ward is the one guy that could come in and do both things. He can make your future bright, and he can help you win games this year that might keep Brian Callahan employed by the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, it does seem like the obvious choice there. But again, it's just a matter of putting him in the right situation to succeed early, because we've seen with a lot of these teams who draft quarterbacks high up, there are already such astronomical expectations for these guys. And then they come in and they have a really poor offensive line, which we just talked about with Kansas City and one of the greatest of all time, Patrick Mahomes. If he can't do it with a poor offensive line, a rookie is going to have a really hard time doing it with a poor offensive line or poor wide receivers or whatnot. And again, it is situation based where not every rookie quarterback that goes into what is proclaimed a good situation is going to have a great all-time year as a rookie. Like, for example, Caleb Williams, everyone thought, okay, they got Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, they signed DeAndre Swift. It's like, oh, look at all these weapons for Caleb. But then it was Jaden Daniels who went out with Terry McLaurin and other guys, and he had the good season. So for Tennessee, I mean, Tyler is right in the fact that, like, this quarterback market in general, and with the way that the contracts are just booming right now with that position, Sam Darnold's a player that does he deserve $40+ million per season? Well, he turned his career around, but $40+ million for what, 3-4 seasons? That's a lot of money, especially if he's not the long-term answer for a team like Tennessee. I'm not sure he's a long-term answer anywhere, but he's still going to get that money. So the bridge quarterback option does make sense. if that's the case and they want to bring in a guy like Kirk Cousins or whoever it may be, does that deter them from bringing in a guy like Cam Ward? And do you go with an Abdul Carter despite the injury? Tennessee has a really interesting question ahead because they could also trade the pick and they can move back a couple spots. Maybe there's a team that does like Shedeur Sanders. I know that there's some conversations about where he's going to go in the draft, but maybe someone likes him enough to trade up to 1 and take him instead, which again would shock me because Cam Ward seems to be the guy at that position. But for Tennessee, it's like, do they have enough right now? Like for the Pittsburgh Steelers, their defense is so good. It always has been. And so on the offensive side of the ball, Russell Wilson made sense because it's like, okay, if he can just be a competent level game manager for them, that defense can carry him. But for Tennessee, do they have enough to be able to say a veteran is the answer for them at this point, or should they just embrace a rebuild?
Yeah, and then the other thing is I read a report today that maybe Minnesota is going to let Sam Darnold see just how much money he can make on the market. And the fact that the Vikings are sitting there could drive that price up a little bit for the Titans. I'm just wondering, man, if you know Kirk Cousins at $20 million ain't the answer, and you know Sam Darnold at $20 million ain't the answer, why don't you just go get Jameis Winston for half that money if you're going to onboard a young guy? Cleveland certainly understands money in the quarterback position because they're still paying Deshaun Watson an astronomical amount of money. And not only is he banged up, but when he wasn't banged up, he wasn't playing very well. And I'm sure that they've lost a lot of confidence, but too bad you still owe them the money. Here's my man, German. I love saying this last name because I lived in Germany. But here's my man with Locked On Browns. And Spencer German is going to tell you right now about the fit with Mr. Ward and the Browns.
Part of the fun of the offseason is connecting dots. And if you like connecting dots as much as I do, let's connect these ones. Cam Ward praised the Browns at his press conference at the NFL Combine on Friday.
Doing real good. Being able to meet with the GM, finally meet the quarterbacks coach in person, the OC as well. They do an unbelievable job on offense, getting people open. They got an unbelievable offensive line. Jerry Jeudy's one of the best receivers in the league. So, if I'm hoping to go there, I know it'll work out good.
But wait, there's more, because Cam Ward also talked about what he thinks his number one trait is. And as much as people don't think he can maybe play in the Browns offense, this statement tells me otherwise.
I think my best trait is winning from the pocket, and I got better at that over my years throughout college. And at the end of the day, as a quarterback, you can't rely on scramble drill and, having to win out of structure, because you can't win in the pocket, you'll never be successful.
I still think Shedeur Sanders is the better fit for Stefanski's offense of the two. But being able to throw from the pocket is something you got to do in Kevin Stefanski's system. Cam Ward says he can do it. I don't know. Based on what Aaron Jabari and Kevin Stefanski said about building your offense around a talent, just saying, there might be something there. We'll talk about it on today's Locked On Browns later this afternoon.
It's funny, Cam Ward had like a 3rd or 4th round grade on him when he was at Washington State. And usually NFL scouts, they draft a couple of years in advance. I think people really, really missed on that one when they said he was a 3rd or 4th round pick, and now people are talking about him being number 1. The other oddity in this is this. When they were somebody asked me about a comp for Shedeur Sanders, I said it was Deshaun Watson when he came out because his velocity was questioned, but he just had this cool, calm feeling about him. I said Deshaun Watson in Houston, to me, is the upside that you have for Shedeur Sanders without so much ability to scramble. Do you think 2 quarterbacks will go in the top 3?
Top 3, I think that if a team is desperate enough to trade up, that they will. And that's because we just talked about there's just a lack of options this year. And I feel like a team will talk themselves into both Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. That's not a bad thing. I'm not saying that is a bad thing. I'm just saying that, like, when you have those 2 clear-cut guys at the top, like, for example, in the draft last year, there were 5 guys, 6 guys you could argue and be like, okay, well, if this guy doesn't fall, then we have this as a backup plan, and maybe we could trade up for this guy if this guy goes early. And that's where we saw that run of quarterbacks where there were, again, 5, 6 players you could say, okay, we want this guy. We're going to see how it pans out. There's not that this season. There's a lot of question marks behind Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders. So if a team is like, we really need a guy, free agency, because also this can be dictated by free agency, where guys have options. If they want a Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers doesn't work out for them. And obviously a team like the people are pointing to the Giants to say, like, okay, what if they miss out on A, B, C, D, all these plans? But they're just going to say, well, now we need Shedeur Sanders. We're going to have to trade up into the top 3 to go get him. I'm going to say 2 quarterbacks in the top 5, not top 3. I'm going to go top 5. I think that a lot of people are kind of fluctuating on where Shedeur Sanders is actually going to go. And I see, is he going to go 6, 7, 8? How far is he going to drop? I don't think he drops that far, honestly. I think he's too talented too, and I also think that teams need quarterbacks. So I think Cam Ward is going to go top 2, and that's even if a team trades up. But I think for Sanders, I think, some of the stuff about his fall might be real, but I think that a team's going to need to trade up for a quarterback, and so he will go maybe earlier than some people think.
Yeah, I do too. And Shedeur has something that people never really talk about and discuss. Well, there's 2 things. Everybody wants to talk about the watches and all of this stuff. And the only thing with all of that stuff, I say it kind of distracts from who he really is. And some of the comments, they kind of distract. And people need to get over themselves, right? But unfortunately, they don't. There's 2 things that he does that are underrated that coaches love. He has poise. He has a lot of poise. The other thing that he has is he has a very high football IQ. And he wants to be great. So I think coaches believe they can win with those things. How many times you get a dude with a rocket arm and a guy that can run around, but yet and still the defense does one formation and all hell breaks loose and he doesn't know where he's supposed to go with the football. Or things get tough and then he shrinks in the moment because he doesn't have that poise. He doesn't have that inner dog in him to calm him down when things are hot. I just think he's getting a little bit of a bad rap. But I understand that when you're talking about picking a guy in the top 5, like for instance, if somebody says he's going to have a Geno Smith career, and Geno Smith signed a $100 million extension not that long ago, that's not good enough for people to pick a guy in the top 5. Trust me, I'm living it right now with Trevor Lawrence. It's not good enough to just be decent. You have to be generational, or you have to be the kind of guy that's going to lead the team to championships for people to be really, really happy with where you were picked. I'm living it with Trayvon Walker. The dude has double-digit sacks the last 2 years, and people act like he's a bust, and he's just really not. And it's just that when you pick that high, people have high expectations. You mentioned Pittsburgh. We're going to talk about them, because I think they may have made an error or be in the midst of making an error with how they're slow playing Justin Fields, who looks like he's going to be the guy, even though they kind of put him on the bench last year. He's going to be the guy that they try to bring back. We'll talk about the team in your division that I'm surprised you actually gave credit to earlier, because I know you want to trash them every time you get a chance. We'll do that in just a second here on Locked On NFL. Third segment here from 2 teams that one is used to winning and they know they need a quarterback and they're probably going to do whatever they can to get one. Another team that needs a quarterback, and I'm afraid that they might not think that they do need one. The team where the combine was just held. But first, Pittsburgh, I think they're slow playing this a little bit. Even though Justin Fields didn't start, I keep hearing from people that are associated with the team that he's their pick. He's their guy. You better not let him get to free agency, though, because the Giants and the Jets might be in a little bit of a dilemma. And I don't think the Titans will hang around and try to get involved in that. But you just might see the price go up with Justin Fields if you're not careful. Listen to Chris Carter from Locked On Steelers.
The free agency period beginning is right around the corner now, and they still haven't signed Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. We talked to Omar Khan while he was there. He said obviously it would be ideal to sign one of these quarterbacks before the free agency period starts, and that's now the clock that I think they're kind of on. But where do you see these negotiations, or these even just this decision? Because it's not even negotiations, it's decision-making at this point for the Steelers being, what do you feel is this team's priority?
Well, I think they want to sign Justin Fields. I think that's pretty clear. The question really there is, does Justin Fields want to sign with them? Is he willing to sign with them before the start of the free agency period? And then if not, how much do they really want to sign Justin Fields? Are they willing to take the chance on letting Russell Wilson get away and maybe ending up with neither of them to try to continue to pursue Justin Fields after the 10th and the contact period starts? That, I think, is a lot more questionable.
You know what, man? If you really want somebody, you don't have to go through all these mental gymnastics. You just make sure you do what you can to keep them. Kind of makes me think that they want him, but not really.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on over in Pittsburgh, and that's fine for me as a Ravens fan. I mean, if they don't know what they're doing, I'm fine with that. But I'm telling you, the whole Russell Wilson, Justin Fields thing, I guess appreciated the fact that they went out there and tried to get 2 quarterbacks in. that if one didn't work out, the other could have helped. And we certainly saw that both guys had moments for them last season, but clearly Russell Wilson is not the guy that you need if you want to get over that hump. And for Justin Fields, the potential is there, and we saw flashes, but we also saw some of the reasons why he hasn't been able to be a consistent starter in the league ever since he got drafted. So I don't know. Out of those two, I think Fields is the correct option. But then again, you look at the other quarterback position, you look at the quarterback position in terms of free agency, like, does a guy like Kirk Cousins make sense for them? Does an Aaron Rodgers trade make sense for them? Because with that defense, they will always have that with as long as guys like TJ Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, etc. are there. It's not like they need to have a Lamar Jackson, a Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes with that defense. But still, you have to have competent quarterback play. And too many times last season for Russell Wilson, we saw, just weird decisions, bad turnovers, and every quarterback has that. But it's about the ceiling of the entire team. And I think while Russell Wilson certainly raised it last year, I don't think it was to the level that they needed it to be. So for Fields, if they believe in the jump, I think that he is the top ceiling option that they can get. There are a lot of floor options, but the thing with Justin is that the floor is lower than probably a guy like an Aaron Rodgers or Kirk Cousins, etc. So if they want to take that risk and go with, okay, this is going to be the breakout year, I think out of all the options, that's the best ceiling option they can get. But with that does come one of the lower floor options, and they have to weigh that risk out.
They absolutely have to weigh that risk out. Speaking of the team that's risky, team in Indy. Indy seems like they're looking around at every single thing except the thing that I believe they need most. Trust me, I am not one to give up on players. I do not believe Anthony Richardson is ever going to be good enough to take that team to where they need to go. But somehow, some way, it looks like they're looking at other options in Indy. Listen to the guys at Locked On Colts.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one, the guy we've been talking about for the last 2 weeks, honestly, is Texas A&M pass rusher Shamar Stewart.
Yes.
And I've been making the quip on the show the last couple of weeks is like, look, if Stewart's there at 14, Chris Ballard's going to have that Green Goblin voice in his head about how he's got to do it. And I know everyone's not going to love it because it's a guy with 4.5 career sacks in 3 seasons.
And they just drafted an edge last year in the first.
But look, this is the perfect. We just talked about Dio Dangbo leaving in free agency. This is their replacement for Dio Dangbo. He came in at 6'5", 267, so a little bit under the weight that he was listed in college. 34-inch arms, which is insane. Ran a 4.59, had a 40-inch vertical and a 10.11 broad. Honestly, what's funny is the expectations were so high from him, like in his testing, that the 4.59 feels underwhelming to a degree.
Listen, man, I like Shamar Stewart. I think he's going to be a really, really good football player. Colts need a quarterback. They can talk about all these other positions. I believe the Indianapolis Colts need a quarterback. And one of the reasons I believe that, and I hate to harp on this too much, the kid tapped himself out of a game, and I think he lost the respect of his teammates.
Yeah, that whole situation was bad in the first place. And, I think you and I talked about this, right when it happened. It's like, you're taking that to the grave, man. You cannot say, even if it's not the truth, you cannot say that because like you said, it just starts this whole thing. And honestly, teammates, coaches remember that. And so for a guy like Anthony Richardson, who again, the situation, he shouldn't have been playing as much as he did early. The Colts should have had a better plan for him. This is not all Anthony Richardson's fault. I don't want to say that because it's not. But in reality here, you have a player that just hasn't developed partially because he was thrown into the fire when he was not ready to be thrown into the fire. But as you and I have talked about for so many of these episodes of Locked On NFL, teams want to win now. And when you take a draft pick in top 5, fans, teams, executives, they want this guy to play. They don't want him sitting on the bench anymore. This guy needs to play. This guy needs to return value. And I feel like we have gotten away from the old NFL, which is, hey, you take a guy and he needs a couple of years. Well, guess what? He'll get those couple of years. And we've seen countless examples of guys sitting behind another veteran for a year, half a year, whatever it is. Anthony Richardson did not get that luxury. And here he is now. And we're talking about the Colts needing a new quarterback, which I do agree with. I don't know what that looks like this offseason. I feel like they're going to give it one more go-around with Anthony Richardson and then kind of move off of him next season if it doesn't work out, which I don't really have high expectations for. But they're a team that just seems to be in limbo. They're a team that, they have good talent, they have solid pieces, but it always feels like they're going to be in that like 14th to 16th to 12th pick range because they just can't get over that hump completely. And part of that is because the quarterback situation has been pretty interesting since Andrew Luck left.
The coach remind me of a team that makes just as much money. Like, say a guy makes just as much money as another dude, but the other guy is real good at saving and investing. But you're not. You spend, and you're always out. You're always eating surf and turf. You want the same things that they want, the comfort that they have. You actually have the same opportunity, but because you're not doing the things that they do, and I think the coach saw Lamar Jackson, the coach saw Jalen Hurts. The coach then saw, before that, they saw Josh Allen, guys that had questions about their ability to throw, and people just marveled at their athleticism. And they thought just by drafting Anthony Richardson, the same thing was going to happen. But they didn't do what those other teams did. And that is put them in a system and do things that are conducive to them learning and developing. And I think you want to be like somebody else, you really have to be like them and not just be like them. You know what I mean? You can be like me and Tyler Rowland. All you got to do is tap into Locked On NFL twice a day. That's right. Tyler Rowland early in the morning. The madman will hit you like a double shot of espresso. And then I'll slide through in the barbershop. We'll go tell everybody why they are wrong about what they're saying about their teams. And they need to do what we tell them to do here on Locked On NFL. Y'all make sure you tap back in each and every day wherever you get your podcast. For Kevin Ostrak and Tony Wiggins, y'all take care. We'll see you next time.